the definition of insanity. I mean, it's amazing that Parsha of the Week always speaks to current events. It's just incredible. The headlines in today's paper is Shelley Yachamovich urges desperately the Prime Minister to push forward with the peace process. That's the headlines. Urgently push forward with the peace process. Isn't that something new and innovative? Push forward with the peace process. Haven't I heard that before, Reb Aaron? Shelley, wake up and smell the coffee. Albert Einstein said, Nechama, the definition of insanity, you can look it up, is if a person keeps doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. So our president, Shimon Peres, the peace process must move forward. I mean, where has he been? How many sacrifices does it take? I mean, you're expecting different results. You keep doing the same nonsense over and over again. And this time it'll be different. That's, according to Einstein, Rabbi Yaakov, the definition of insanity. And this is the modern day Beryl spy syndrome. Ripped from today's headlines. What the spies said, Lo yuchal lalot el ha'am, ki chazak hu mimenu. It's exactly what they're saying today, that the Arabs are too powerful for us. Without a PLO a terror state, we cannot have a Jewish state. Right? That's what the president of Israel, can you believe that? Yes. Without a PLO terror state, there's no hope for the Jewish state. So we don't surrender, there's no hope. That's exactly what the Meraglim said. Exactly. This is the spy syndrome. We're reliving it again. Unfortunately, our politicians are reincarnated spies. They speak the same demoralizing talk. It's amazing that they say Israel will cease to exist as a Jewish state if we don't surrender to our so-called peace partners. That attitude of surrender and defeatism, that's exactly what the Meraglim said. Lo yuchal lalot et ha'am, ki chazak hu mimenu. Well, and our president just said, recently at the conference in Amman, Jordan, Israel is doomed. This is the president of Israel, Shirley. Israel is doomed unless we accept a PLO state on the 1967 lines. This is not Abu Mamzer talking. This is the president of Israel in Amman. Now, the Meraglim are also chief rabbis. The Meraglim were Roshei B'nai Yisrael Heima. Each and every one was a... So, we have Nebuch the syndrome, and the answer is not to despair. Despite that syndrome and defeatism, not to give in to it, to get beyond it. It's just unbelievable that in the Parsha that we read yesterday, all of the ugly statements of Dasan the Aviram, right? All the abuse that Moshe Rabbeinu takes, it never says he becomes angry. Only when Dasan the Aviram referred to Cairo as a Oretz Zavas Cholas Udvash, you hear, the land of milk and honey which God reserves for Pisgat Zev, this is God's terms of endearment for Israel, these guys apply it to Cairo. When Moshe heard that, it says, Vayichal Moshe Ma'od. Moshe became very angry. Rashi said, Nitztayer ad Ma'od. All the abuse he took up till now, from the Meraglim and from Korach, he didn't become angry. Once you begin to mock Eretz Yisrael, Vayichal Moshe Ma'od. So the question is, Dasan the Aviram said these ugly, disgusting statements. Why does the Torah have to record it, Abraham, for posterity? So they said it. No. Why do you have to record it, Nechama? Nechama was mechavan to Rav Soloveitchik. Make my day, Nechama. Make my day. Rav Soloveitchik said that unfortunately the Dasan v'Aviram syndrome is not an isolated case in Jewish history. We're going to suffer from Dasan, that they were so-called leaders. We're going to have this phenomenon, as Bob Grant said, that's sick and getting sicker, throughout Jewish history. We're haunted by the Dasan v'Avirams. We have to know about it, said the Rav, and we have to not to despair, hang in there despite the Dasan v'Avirams. They could not prevent the first Geula, Rabbi Yaakov, could they? Despite their ugly talk and slandering Israel, we still got the Eretz Yisrael. We still got the Geula. So too, our modern day Dasan v'Avirams will also not be able to prevent and hold up what? The final Geula. So the Torah records it, said Rav Soloveitchik, like the Chama said, that it's not an isolated incident in Jewish history. This phenomenon of the Dasan v'Aviram Meraglim syndrome is destined to haunt the Jewish people throughout history for whatever reason. We have to know about it, we have to identify it, and we have to what? Get beyond it. And the ikar is not to despair and not to fall in with that defeatism. We have to identify it and reject it, said Rav Soloveitchik. Now, if you think about Dasan v'Aviram, did these guys like each other, Rabbi Yaakov? No. The first time we met them, they were beating each other up. Moshe Rabbeinu had to say, Rasha lama sakarayecha. Right? They were beating each other up. Moshe had to prevent them from what? Killing each other. One minute. So these guys couldn't stand each other. Dr. Abramson, what united them? Their hatred for the state of Israel. You see that today. You have, who are the Dasan Avirams today? You have J Street, and you have the Neturei Karta. Do they like each other? But what unites them? Their hatred for the state of Israel. So we have our Dasan v'Avirams today, as Nechama said. We have to know about it, we have to identify it, and we have to reject them. Yes?
What about our fellow Yehudin living in Chutz La'aretz who say, you can't be that.
That's the Dasan v'Aviram syndrome. They said, you took us out from a land flowing with milk and honey. They regard Egypt or Chutz La'aretz as a land flowing with milk and honey. That type of attitude, that's the Dasan v'Aviram attitude.
But it's not only the extremists, J Street, it's good Jews.
So-called. We have to be aware and not to fall into despair. That's the ikar. That's the ikar.
Where's the Erev Rav?
Well, that's the Erev. Who are the Erev Rav? Right? Who are they? The naysayers, those that insult and reject Eretz Yisrael. Thank you. They say there's no hope without a PLO terror state. It looks like our politicians of a reincarnation of Erev Rav or the Neturei Karta or the Dasan v'Avirams. But this is our destiny, and we have to know that this is a Jewish sickness, and we have to, Avram, not to fall into Yush. That's the ikar. Not to despair, to hang in there. We'll get past it, like we got past the first Dasan v'Avirams, and we made it to Israel. There were setbacks, but we made it, and so too we're going to have the final Geula as well, despite the Dasan v'Avirams. And as the Geula gets closer, you see their hatred gets stronger. Because a candle, right, before it gives, like the koyach of evil, before it's extinguished, it has to give its last burst. The Vilna Gaon said that the word shachar, what is dawn called in Hebrew, Rabbi Yaakov? Shachar. Shachar is called dawn. Shachar is called dawn. But it's the same root as the word shachor. Black is black. I'm dating myself.
Who was that, Santana?
Las Cuomos. Don't quote me on that. Black is black. Shachar is the same root as the word shachor. Why is dawn the same root as the word black? Says Vilna Gaon, because the blackest hour of the night is right before dawn. Says Vilna Gaon, if that's true in the physical world, that the blackest hour of the night is right before dawn, it is certainly true in the spiritual world. When there's so much darkness around us, it's a siman that the dawn of redemption, Avram, is what? Close at hand. Don't despair. Hang in there. Despite our what? Our politicians of piss processes. Right? Right? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The president of Israel in Amman, Jordan, to speak about... it's unbelievable. Anyway, who does he speak for anyway? Who does he speak for? What? We'll point to him to speak. What? Now, the Pashas Korach. Korach and Dosan the Aviram, the Oin ben Peles b'nei Ruvain. Rashi wonders, okay, the Korach, he had a gripe. Because Moshe was his cousin. He felt it's nepotism, it's all in the family, so give me a piece of the action. But where did the Reubenites come in? Dosan Aviram, Oin ben Peles b'nei Ruvain, what shaykos did they have to the rebellion? So Rashi says, because Shevet Ruvain in the desert camped next to Kahat. Next to Kahat. Kahat is the Korach families, right? Nishtatfu im Korach b'machlokoto. Oile Rasha, oile Shcheno. Because the Reubenites lived next door to the Levites, so they got sucked in. Woe to the wicked, and woe to the neighbor of a wicked. You have wicked neighbors, what are you supposed to do? Move. Since the Reubenites were camping next to the Kahatites, they got sucked into the rebellion, which wasn't even their own concern.
Isn't there a Yiddish expression, first find out who the neighbors are and then buy the apartment?
First find out who the neighbors are, what? Yeah. Now Rashi says, Parsha zu yofa nedreshet. This Parsha Korach is beautifully darshaned in the Medrash. Which Parsha is not beautifully darshaned, Avram? What's Rashi's point? Parsha zu yofa nedreshet. This Parsha is beautifully darshaned in the Midrash. All Parshas are beautiful in the Midrash. What does Rashi mean? So the Mefarshim say that this Parsha is beautifully darshaned in the Midrash because, unfortunately, it's very, very topical. Because in every shul, unfortunately, you have machlokes, aliyah, shlishi, shishi, the omid, the breitel. So it's a parsha which is yofa nodreshet, because unfortunately, in every shul, right, there's nebech machlokes. So parshas Korach is always what? Topical. Yofa nodreshet. Machlokes. Speaking about machlokes, husband and wife couldn't get along. That machlokes, it happens, right, Rabbi Yaakov? It happens. Machlokes. So they went to a marriage counselor, Rabbi Moshe. The marriage counselor says to the husband, your problem is you have too much pent-up energy. You have to get rid of that energy, jog 7 miles a day for a week, and then after a week, call me up and tell me how things are progressing. So a week goes by, and the husband calls up the marriage counselor. And he asks him, and he tells him. So he says, no. He says, I tell you, Doc, the first day, very difficult, 7 miles. Second day, difficult. But later on in the week, I got the hang of it. I'm really jogging those 7 miles a day. I'm really into it. He says, but the Ika, how are things with your wife? So the husband says, how should I know? I'm 49 miles away. Don't you get it? The doctor told the Nechama to jog 7 miles a day for a week. So it's a week later, Reuven. He says, how do things are with my wife? How should I know? I'm 49 miles away. So that ends the machlokes, right, doctor?
Right.
At least there's no machlokes about that. Okay. That's one way to make shalom bayis. I think it's called a long-distance marriage. Okay. But anyway, Oin ben Peles, one of the ringleaders, mysteriously disappears, Shirley. What happens to him? So the Talmud in Sanhedrin tells us that Mrs. ben Peles says, Oin, let's talk it over. Let's sit down. Listen, you're foolish. Whoever's going to win the machlokes and be the leader, you will simply remain just a follower. It doesn't matter. What do you gain out of it? He said, he scratched his head. You're right. He pulled out of the machlokes and he was saved. And the Medrash says, why was he called On? From the word onen. He never stopped mourning for his initial folly in joining the Korach rebellion. He kept beating up on himself. Onen, from the word avelut, because initially he was involved. And he couldn't get that down, so he was called On. It's a sign of tshuva. Ben Pelet, from the word Avram Pele. What does Pele mean? Wonder of wonder, miracles. Why is it called a pelephone? It's a wonder. Look, Mar, no wires. So he was called Ben Pelet. It was a pellet that he listened to his wife. It was a wonder he listened to his wife and he survived the Korach disaster. That's a wonder. That's why he was called Ben Pelet. Right? It's a wonder he listened to the Bible for a change. We know Isha Gematria Musar. Do we know that? Aleph Shin Hey, wife in Hebrew, is Gematria Musar. You can figure it out, 306. Aleph Shin Hey is how much? 306. Musar, Mem Vav Samach Reish, is also 306. Mem is 40, Vav is 6. Samach is 60, Reish is 200. That's 306. So the tafkid of a wife is to give musar. But the word musar, Shirley, is gematria devash. Dalit is 2, Beis is 4, and Shin is what? 300. Is also what? Coinky dinky? Yes, a wife has to give musar, but she has to give it in a honey way. Honey, I'm home. Otherwise, the musar is worthless, Beryl. If the wife gives musar, but it's not devash, it's worthless. So Mrs. Ben Peles, she knew how to give the musar in a honey-coated. Otherwise, hubby won't accept it. Honey-do, right? That's right. Amazing. Isha, Gematria, Musar, and Devash all have the same numerical value, Reb Yaakov. It's unbelievable. So he was called On as a sign of avelut for his initial folly. And he did tshuva. Wait a minute. The Bnei Korach, they also did tshuva. Avram, how come they're not called On? They also mourned. Part of tshuva, you have to have busha and avelut for past mistakes. So the Bnei Korach also did tshuva. How come they're not called On?
They waited.
Huh? Why they're not called On? And the answer to this question is another question. The Torah doesn't tell us the Bnei Korach lo mesu until Parshas Pinchas. We're kept in suspended animation. If you just read the Parsha here, Rabbi Yaakov, it doesn't say they survived. You have to wait a few weeks to find out that they survived. Why? The Torah wants to observe their behavior. What does their tshuva consist of? Is it like On, just feeling sorry for yourself and remaining in a state of depression? That's not true tshuva. You have to move on. You have to progress and do a tikkun for your chet. The Bnei Korach eventually composed the most beautiful psalms in Tehillim. The psalms that we say before shofar blusen. They composed that as a tikkun for their chet of joining Dad. Bnei Korach lo mesu. The Torah says, let's wait and see. How does their tshuva progress? will they continue to beat up on themselves and berate themselves and feel sorry for themselves? Like On passed on to oblivion. He just couldn't get out of the box of feeling sorry for himself, of feeling shame and regret, but he made nothing of himself. That's not the way of tshuva. Of course you have to have busha and charuta, but then you have to what? Progress. Do a tikkun. Grow spiritually, progress. And the Bnei Korach did that by composing the most beautiful psalms in the entire Tehillim as a tikkun for what? For their sin. So tshuva means after the initial stage of mourning and busha, you've got to move forward. You can't stay stuck and be sorry for yourself and keep berating yourself, because then the depression becomes an end in itself. And your life is ruined. He couldn't get past the Avelut. But the Bnei Korach, the Torah bides its time. How did they behave? Well, they composed the most beautiful psalms. Bnei Korach lo mesu. Right? They continued to grow, progress, despite their sin, or perhaps because of their sin, to compose the most beautiful psalms that have given inspiration, Rabbi Yaakov, to countless generations of Jews and Gentiles. That's a direct result of their chet. If it wasn't for their chet, we would never have these beautiful psalms right before you, below Shofar, Elisheva. It's the Bnei Korach. Because of their sin and their tikkun. So what do we learn? That everybody sins. What do you do after the sin? Do you remain depressed? That's Satan's trap. Or do you move forward? There's an amazing pasuk when Lot is taken out of the burning city of Sodom. The Malach says something amazing to him. Now, we don't need to know what the Malach said to Lot 3,800 years ago on some deserted road. The Malach says to him, "V'yoymehi moleit al nafshecha al tabit achrecha." I am in Genesis 19, verse 17. As Lot is being saved, it says the Malach said to him, "He moleit al nafshecha." Genesis 19, verse 17. Al tabit achrecha. We don't need to know what the Malach said to Lot. Torah is not a history book. The Torah is God's authorized manual for living in the year 2013. So the Malach is speaking to every one of us, Shirley. He moleit al nafshecha. If you want to save your soul, al tabit achrecha. Don't keep looking over your shoulder at past mistakes. Otherwise, you won't be able to save your soul. You become like On. Pass into oblivion. Feeling sorry for yourself, beating up on yourself. That's Satan's trap. The Malach warned us, "He moleit al nafshecha." If you want to save your soul and make something of yourself, al tabit achrecha. Don't keep looking over your shoulder. And the skeletons in the closet. Let sleeping dogs lie. Some people just can't get past their mistakes. They're haunted by it, like On was. He made nothing of his life. Unlike the Bnei Korach, who moved on and became the great Nevi'im and composing the most beautiful psalms.
What number is that?
Which number one?
The psalm. What number psalm?
They did many psalms, the Bnei Korach. Lamatzeach Bnei Korach, many, many psalms. There's so many of them. There's 79, and there's 86.
The one we said before Shofar is 47.
47 before Shofar Blosen. Many, the most beautiful ones are said by them as a tikkun for the chet. So if they wouldn't have sinned with Dad, we would have never had the benefit of those exalting psalms. If David would not have sinned with Bathsheba, think of it, we wouldn't have the most classic psalm of tshuva, Psalm 51. The classic psalm of tshuva was written right after his sin of Bathsheba. Not a license to sin, but everybody sins. Question is, what do you do after the sin? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Or do you progress, move on, grow spiritually, produce? Tilim, Chidushay Torah, Chesed. You use the sin as a springboard. Therefore, when a person does tshuva me'ahava, the avera becomes a mitzvah. Why, Abraham? The avera becomes a mitzvah because the person uses that avera as what? A springboard to catapult higher and higher, which he wouldn't have done if he didn't have the sin. So memela, the sin itself becomes what? It's mind-boggling, yes? The awesome opportunity that you didn't have if we just take advantage of it. But On was too ashamed. For whatever reason, he felt humiliated that his wife had to save him. Couldn't live it down, I guess. And he passed unto oblivion, Nebuch, unlike the Bnei Korach. It's amazing. The Baal Shem Tov says, Korach had legitimate issues. It's amazing, Rabbi. Rashi says, Ein machzikin b'machloket. Does Rashi say don't take part in machlokes? No. Doesn't say anywhere don't take part in machlokes. You know why? Because it's human nature, Dr. Abramson, to take machlokes. But the ein machzikin b'machlokes. Don't persist. State your piece and then back off. Everybody has complaints. State them and back off. The problem is with Korach, he didn't know when to quit. He kept pouring fuel onto the fire. Ad kidei kach, says the Gemara in Sanhedrin 109, that he accused Moshe Rabbeinu of adultery. Can you imagine that? Sanhedrin 109 says that Korach accused Moshe of adultery. A virile man like Moshe separates from his wife. Something's going on there. Crazy, illogical charges. He didn't know when to shut up, said the Baal Shem Tov. Ein machzikin b'machlokes. He had legitimate tinus. If he would have stated them and stopped, he would have been accommodated. The problem is he kept pushing the envelope. In Yiddish, ibbe gerissen de strickel. How do you say that in Yiddish? Ibbe gerissen de strickel. The string. He just pushed the envelope beyond. We see, surely, Bahad Machlokis, the people who were carrying Yosef's bones. What? Yes? Sharona said what? The people carrying Joseph's bones, didn't they complain? Why should we be shut out? They complained, they backed off, and Moshe accommodated them. We gave them Pesach Sheni. The B'nai Slavchat later on also complained. Machlokis. But they backed off and Moshe accommodated them. The same would have happened with Korach. But he just didn't know when to let go until he destroyed himself. Ein machzikin b'machlokes. You don't persist. And that was their mistake. And that cost him dearly. Now, Rashi said, Korach shepikeach hoya. He was a brilliant man. Maro l'shtus zeh. Says Rashi, Eino hitato. He was a Navi. Can you imagine? His prophetic eye misled him. He saw that Shmuel HaNavi is coming out from him. Shmuel HaNavi, who's Shokol Keneged Moshe v'Aaron. And who's going to be Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson? Look in Shoftim. Yonatan ben Gershom ben Moshe, who was a Reform rabbi. Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson was a Reform rabbi. The rabbis asked him, are you nuts? He says, look, it's a good job. Security. Yonatan, what? He was a Navi Sheket. I'm putting it in. He was a Navi Sheket to Avodah Zarah. Pesel Micha. Remember Pesel Micha? Who was the Navi in charge of the religion? Yonatan ben Moshe Rabbeinu. Can you imagine that? So Korach saw that. He just couldn't swallow it. I should be taking orders from my cousin. My grandson is going to be Shmuel Hanavi, who's Shokol Keneged Moshe Aaron. His grandson is going to be a Navi Sheket to Avodah Zarah. He couldn't live it down. The answer is God also knew that. And despite that, God chose Moshe. God also knows that. But that when it comes to ego, great people, buddy, have great ego. Since Korach was such a great man spiritually, he had a great ego, and he just couldn't swallow the fact that his grandson is equal to Moshe and Aaron, and Moshe's grandson is going to be a Navi Sheket to and mislead Jews in Avodah Zarah. I should be taking orders from my cousin? How dare him? The answer is God also knew that, and yet God said, Moshe's my man. So when ego gets in the way, look out. Look out, Moshe. Great people are destroyed by their great ego. Joe the bum doesn't have a great ego. How could he? But great people know they're great. So their egos are great, and a lot of times, buddy, it just what? Destroys them. Now, the Haftorah, buddy, that we didn't read yesterday, because it was what? But we would have read it from the book of Shmuel. Vayomer Shmuel Eloham, Hashem asher osa et Moshe et Aaron. Here, Shmuel told the people something amazing. It's God that appointed Moshe and Aaron. Thank you very much. Why does Shmuel Hanavi have to tell the people, Hashem asher osa Moshe v'Aaron, vayishlach Hashem et Moshe v'Aaron? Because Grandpa didn't know that. Grandpa accused Moshe of appointing himself and his brother. So Shmuel Hanavi, the grandson, says, Grandpa, you're wrong. Vayomer Shmuel, Hashem asher osa et Moshe et Aaron. Vayishlach Hashem et Moshe et Aaron. Unlike Grandpa who said that what? Moshe appointed himself and appointed his brother. So this is the tikkun. That's why we read the Haftorah together with Korach, because Shmuel Hanavi is doing the tikkun for the Zayda. Zayda, you're wrong. They didn't appoint themselves. Over and over again, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem osa Moshe v'Aaron, vayishlach Hashem et Moshe et Aaron. And then he says, you Jews are doing a great evil. Know and see this great evil. You have done a great evil in the eyes of God. Lishor lachem melech. You hear, Moshe? What's the great evil? You have asked God for a king. That's a great evil in the eyes of Hashem. The question is, it's one of the Taryag mitzvot. Just like it says put on tefillin in the Torah, in the mitzvah. And it says eat matzah on Pesach and blow a shofar when? Rabbi Yaakov, it says soin tosam alech o melech. It's in the Zelba Sefer HaMitzvot of the Rambam and the Chinuch and all the mitzvah counters. The Zelba Taryag mitzvah that says put on tefillin and eat kosher says appoint the king. So what kind of great evil? A Jew wants to do a mitzvah, Dr. Abramson. Why is it a great evil? Why is it a great evil that you have done in the eyes of Hashem? So, it's a mitzvah. You're saying very good, but fine-tune it. Rivka. Ooh, you want to come up here?
It was an insult.
Beautiful, Sharona. My Rebbe Rapam Zatzal said, you ladies are on the ball. Mitzvahs are fine and good, but if my mitzvah is going to cause pain and anguish to another yid, Michael Toivis, I don't want your mitzvah. Shmuel Hanavi was very much alive. The Yidden came to him, we don't want you anymore. We're from, we want a king. It's a mitzvah like putting on tefillin. He felt rejected. What am I, an old schmata? 52 years of my lifeblood I gave you. Now you say you don't want me anymore, you want a king?
Hashem said they're rejecting me, not you, Shmuel.
Oh, so what is he, a dish rag? God felt the pain of Shmuel Hanavi. And therefore, even though it was a mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah. If they would have waited until Shmuel dies, then it's kol hakavod. But doing a mitzvah in Yenim's places is no mitzvah. What a powerful message, says Rabbi. That's why it's called Ru'aschem Rabba. A great evil, Ashasitem be'ena Hashem, Lishar lochem melech, because they should have waited until the Navi dies and then asked for a king to cause him pain and anguish. God says, I don't want your mitzvah, yes?
I think Korach, with all his, like you said, a PK and so forth.
Right.
He was really feeling inferior. Really.
He had an inferiority complex.
He became vulnerable in his mind that saying, hey, Moshe is doing a number on all of us.
Yeah.
As well as me. And this one,
But what's amazing, David, is that the Medrash says that Nachshon ben Aminadav, Moshe, this burst my bubble, the hero of the Red Sea, he joined the Korach rebellion. I hate to burst your bubble. My bubble was burst. You look in the Amlo'ez. The Medrash says that the great Nachshon ben Aminadav was taken in. Not just him, other great Sanhedrin guys were conned. Great people have great egos, and it blinds them. That even a Nachshon ben Aminadav can fall in with the Korach.
did he go down with the Torah?
Either that, or he got zapped with the 250 guys. Zap, 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 zap. These were the leaders of the Sanhedrin. It wasn't just him. It's unbelievable. We can't understand that. Because, we're not great people. So our egos are not that great. Right? If you have a great ego. Right? You see, Rosh Hashivas, I don't want to say, but I see, Avram, in my time in Torah Vadas, maybe I shouldn't talk about it. Great Rosh Hashivas, the fights, we were shocked. I don't want to tell you a story. The great Rosh Hashivas, Moshe, I have to tell you about it. The terrible fights in public, we were shocked. These are the Roshei B'nai Yisrael. It's great people have great egos. They just can't control themselves. Rabbi Feinstein, I think was the Yotzim in a Klal. He was the Yotzim in a Klal. He was exception to the rule. But unfortunately, other great rabbis, he was the exception to the rule.
Not always great people who have great egos, i.e. our president.
Well, he considered himself great. Right? Yes?
When speaking about the Shmuel, when Shmuel felt rejected,
Right.
they appointed, he was told to appoint Shaul,
Right.
who was from Binyamin.
Binyamin, right.
Was the result of appointing someone from Binyamin as being the first king, was that a result of, because David is supposed to come from the Davidic dynasty.
Right.
Was that a knas, or was
Says the Ramban, Rabbi Aaron, I'm prepared. There are three reasons why the first king of Israel, Reb Tzvi, had to come from Binyamin. There are three reasons why, Nechama. Counting? Reason number one, the only brother who was not born on Ocean Parkway. I mean Syria. A lot of Syrians on Ocean Park. All the other brothers were born where? In Syria. Binyamin was the only one born in Eretz Yisrael. For that alone, for being born in Israel, says the Ramban, had to be the first king. Reason number two, the only brother that did not humiliate himself in front of Obama. I mean in front of Esav. All the brothers, they all bow down to Esav, remember? Binyamin didn't, Rabbi Yaakov. Why? He wasn't born yet. Saved by the bell. And the third reason why the first king of Israel had to come from Benjamin, the only brother not involved in Mechirat Yosef. Yosef himself was involved in Mechirat Yosef, as Rashi says, because he spoke Lashon Hara against the brothers. He instigated them, so he himself was involved. For his slander, they took it out on him. So he himself was involved. So the only brother not involved in Mechirat Yosef was what, Dr. Abramson? So for those three reasons, he had to be what? The first king of Israel. Says the Ramban, if Shaul would not have sinned, what about La Yosa Shavit Me Yehuda? At Kiyova Shiloh. Yaakov Avinu prophesies that the kingship has to come from what? Yehuda. And if Shaul wouldn't have sinned, says the Ramban, he would have been king on Benjamin forever. And La Yosa Shavit Ben Yehuda would have been what? On the 11 tribes. Reuven, plan A. Plan A seldom works out. So since Shaul did sin, so he lost the kingship even on Benjamin. Now all 12 tribes have to belong to Yehuda. When Mashiach comes, we're going to have reunited, and it feels so good. All the 12 tribes will reunite under Yehuda again. Bring back the good old days, right? So if Saul wouldn't have sinned, there would have been a Benjaminite dynasty on that Shevet. And the Yossi Hevet Yehuda would have been on the other 11. That's how the Ramban interprets it. There's an amazing Rashi over here. Rashi says, come and see how devastating is machloket. Bezdin Sholmata doesn't punish anybody until they're 12 or 13. Bezdin Sholmala doesn't punish anyone until they're 20. Over here, even the Yonke Shodayim, the little babies of Dasan v'Aviram were destroyed. Why? So the Chafetz Chaim wants to know why. The human court doesn't punish until 13, 12. The heavenly court not until 20. Here, babies were destroyed. Why is Machlokas so devastating that even babies are destroyed? Says the Chafetz Chaim something incredible. A person's hopes and aspirations are his children, right? What is God's hope and aspiration? The Pasuk in Mishlei, V'chol netivoi teo shalom. All of God's paths for the Jewish people are supposed to lead to shalom. Right? The last Mishnah in Masechta Uktzin and Shas says, Loi motza HaKadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik bracha li Yisrael ela shalom. God couldn't find a better vessel to give brachas for the Yidden, ela shalom. And then it quotes the Pasuk in Tehillim, Hashem oz l'amo yitain, Hashem yevorech es amo bashalom. So says the Chafetz Chaim, the Tanakh and the Gemara is telling us that God's hopes and dreams for the Jewish people are shalom. So God says, if you tamper with my shalom, if you tamper with my hopes and dreams by destroying shalom, then chas v'shalom, mida keneged mida. God said, lo yaleinu, I'll take it out, lo yaleinu on your future, lo yaleinu, which is lo yaleinu children, says the Chafetz Chaim. God's ambition and future plan for the Jewish people is shalom. And that's a person's ambition, is his children. So God says, you destroy my plans and ambitions by destroying shalom, then mida keneged mida chas v'shalom on a person's plans and futures and hopes and aspirations. And therefore, says the Chafetz Chaim, why a machlokas is so devastating. It works on a mida keneged mida. There's nothing more that God desires for the Jewish people than shalom. The last Mishnah in Shas, Masechta Uktzin. God couldn't find a better vessel to contain bracha except shalom. So when a person has machlokas, what's he doing? He's destroying God's vessel, chas v'shalom. The Kotzker Rebbe, people say L'Shem Shemayim. Oh, Machlokes L'Shem Shemayim. Says the Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov, make sure your Shem Shemayim is really Shem Shemayim. Make sure L'Shem Shemayim is Taka L'Shem Shemayim. That's right. You claim it's Shem Shemayim, but it's the guy in the mirror masquerading as Shem Shemayim. So you have to run away from machlokes like from a fire. Because even if you win machlokes, in the end you lose. You think you win, in the end you lose. Now Moshe, why did Korach have to wind up in the ground? There are many ways that Moshe could have what? Punished him. Why dafke this way? Says the Riyah Kodesh something amazing. It says here, "Upatzta hadama et piyah." The earth will open up her mouth to swallow Korach. Those exact words are written when Cain kills Hevel. It says, "Upatzta hadama et piyah." The earth opened up her mouth to accept the blood of Hevel. Says the Yari, fasten your seatbelts. Cain became Korach. And Hevel became a Gilgal, Moshe Rabbeinu. Cain's problem was jealousy, right? He couldn't stand his brother, Kina, so God brings them back. This time Cain is alias Korach. Hevel is alias Moshe. Again, it's a family issue of Kina. This time it's not two brothers of Kina, it's two cousins. So God brings back Cain and Hevel to make the tikkun. But again, Cain fails, i.e. Korach fails. The Kina got the better of him, like it got when Cain. This time not against his brother, against his cousin. Again, Kina destroyed him. So Cain put Hevel in the ground. It says, "Upatzta hadama et piyah," to take the blood of Hevel. Centuries later, Rabbi Yaakov, God brings back Hevel. This time Hevel is a Gilgal, Moshe Rabbeinu. And Cain is a Gilgal of what? Korach. So now Moshe Rabbeinu, alias Hevel, puts Cain, Korach, back in the ground. It ain't over till it's over, Beryl. Look at the same language. Upatzta hadama et piyah, it says here, and it says when the blood accepted, the earth opened up its mouth to accept the blood of Hevel. Here it says the earth opened up its mouth to accept Korach. So Cain killed Hevel. Now Hevel comes back, Moshe Rabbeinu, and exacts revenge, or you call it justice, and puts Cain in the ground, alias Korach. Says the Riyah Kadosh. Tikkunim have to be made. Korach could have conquered his Kina, and it would have made the tikkun for Cain. But he failed again. This time not against a brother, against what? A cousin. But the same issue. He failed again, so Ein Breira. Now Hevel, alias Moshe, has to put Cain, alias Korach, in the ground. Same language in the Torah, yes?
It's Mida connected Mida. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Vayish Moshe Anam. We call Adama.
Right.
Adama.
No.
So you got the same thing. He said that Moshe was not belonging.
Yeah.
Sitting and taking pictures in the front page.
That's right.
He got the same punishment.
Nachon.
Moshe was from all the people on Damascus.
Right. Upatzta hadama et piyah.
Now you will see you really Moshe.
Nachon, yeah. Upatzta hadama. Yeah, unbelievable. And the last minute, B'nai Korach lo metu. Can you imagine? You can do tshuva at the last minute, right? But Korach was what? Too blinded by jealousy. And he wouldn't do tshuva. But the Medrash says that the prayers of Shmuel HaNavi and his mother Chana, who was his mother? Chana. schlepped grandpa out of Gehenna. The Medrash says, Rabbi Yaakov, that the prayers of Hannah and her son Shmuel schlepped grandpa out of hell. Korach, grandpa. Okay, you want to hear something? We say on Friday night the Yom Shav Shabbos Kodesh and Ayam Yom Shabbos Kodesh. There's a pasuk there. It says, Sadik Katamar Yifrach. Right? It's a pasuk in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. Sadik Katamar Yifrach. Yes? Says the Ari, Sadik, what's the last letter? Kuf. Katamar. What's the last letter? Reish. Yifrach. Ches. What does it spell out?
Winky dinky.
Sadik Katama Yifrach. The last letters of those words spell out Korach. So that's what the Ariya Kodesh says. Why? Korach said instant Kedusha. Kulam Kedoshim. Instant Kabbalah. Instant Kedusha. No, Tzadik Katama Yifrach. Kedusha has to grow very slowly, like a tamar. You know what a tamar is? Date takes a lot of TLC for a date tree to grow. So Korach had to learn, he had to be planted in the ground as a date palm to grow slowly like a tamar. There isn't instant Kedusha. You know what the Ari says? So that's his tikkun. Wasn't a punishment. He was planted in the ground like Tzadik Katama Yifrach. The Tzadik shall grow like a date palm tree. Slowly, step by step. And that spells out the Oisius Kaira. Kedusha has to grow slowly like a tamar. It's not instant Kedusha or instant Kabbalah.
Is that why he's still alive? You can still hear his voice?
You hear his voice.
So it's a plant, not yet...
What? He's still... The Ari says when Mashiach comes, Korach will be completely rehabilitated. The Baal Shem Tov would say, Reb Tzvi, the Heilige Zayde Korach. Say what? The Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yaakov, would say the Heilige Zayde Korach.
What does that mean?
The holy grandfather Korach. He had good ideas, but they were warped. When Mashiach comes, he will be rehabilitated. Okay? Like a date palm tree. It takes time. How long it take for dates to grow, Dr. Abramson? You plant a date palm tree, it takes time, no? Right? Remember that commercial? We will sell no wine before it's time. Or Korach was before his time. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Something just occurred to me that you can elaborate on.
Go ahead.
Before you blow shofar, you say...
There, B'nai Korach.
The only Shmona Esrei of the year that has 9 brachas is the Shmona Esrei of Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
The reason it has 9 brachas is because Chana in her prayer said God's name 9 times. Maybe there's a connection.
Chana, the granddaughter of Korach. She mentioned God's name 9 times in her prayer. And that's why you say their psalms. But why do you say their psalms 7 times before shofar bluzim? Right? Lamatzeach livnei Korach mizmor. We say it 7 times before shofar bluzim. Why? There's 7 heavens, right? I'm in 7. I'm in heaven. Who sang that? I'm in heaven. Of all the Psalms, before the holiest moment, we say the B'nai Korach, Ruvain. What a tikkun. Wow. So what's the message for us? Everybody sins and makes mistakes. But what do you do the next day? Do you keep mourning for yourself like On and become depressed? Or do you move forward Avram, onwards and upwards. Grow, produce as a result of the sin. So the sin itself will become what? A mitzvah. Let's go for it. Shkoyach. Thank you very much. Shkoyach, shkoyach.